Hello viewers. In the 1980s, while he was still singing with his band Culture Club, Boy George asked the questions, "Do you really want to hurt me? Do you really want to make me cry?" To which every arcade game in the same decade replied, "Yes, we're going to f***ing break you." Challenge can certainly prove a subjective notion, but I don't think there's any doubt that games have got much easier since the 80s, what with save states, regenerating health, and the fact that we aren't really attending public arcades anymore, foregoing the maddening difficulty spikes designed to suck ever more coins from our pockets. But there are exceptions to this rule, and there are gamers that pride themselves on overcoming the steepest challenges in search of those platinum trophies, achievements, or just bragging rights amongst friends. What follows in this video are 5 of the very sternest tests you can buy today from any modern digital store, even if the game's original release, as in some cases here, was over 30 years ago, if not closer to 40. If you can tell me that you've completed all 5 of these games, then you can consider yourself a certified Video Games Forever legend. They'll sing songs about you as you proudly walk around your town, making the L sign on your forehead at all the lesser minions who worship at your feet. The original Ghosts and Goblins has to be one of the hardest arcade platformers I've ever played. Over several years in the 80s and 90s, I spent more time running around in my underpants than the cast of 300. Years later, I still play the console emulations on PlayStations from time to time, and Super Ghouls and Ghosts on the mini Super Nintendo. But even now, I still can't say that I find a run through any of the levels easy. By rights, I should have quit with these games a long time ago, but Capcom, like From Software with their Souls series, always do just enough to keep you from running away screaming. There's just something in the character and level design that has you hooked and wanting more. You know you can succeed, and you want to. Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection appears to offer several concessions to the 21st century gamer, including a roguelite style skill tree, 4 difficulty settings and level checkpoints that can be accessed when returning to the game after some time away. Die enough times in quick succession and the game will even ask if you want to reduce the difficulty for the rest of the level. In reality, most of these features do very little at first to aid your progression through each stage. Many of the skills you learn only offer temporary relief from a few minor enemies, of which most will respawn after a few seconds if you're not quick to keep moving. The time it takes to charge abilities and leave yourself vulnerable often isn't worth it. Arguably the biggest challenge you'll face though is the way that player character Arthur moves. His speed doesn't match his furiously pedaling legs, and he has a jump that often seems to fall just short of your intended landing zone. It might seem unfair at first when all the enemies can dart about your head at speed, but give it time and you will adapt, recognizing that it's more pattern recognition than speed of escape that will get you through the levels. The later unlockable skills do offer a few more useful tools, like temporary speed boosts and a doppelganger Arthur who'll help you take down bosses. If you get stuck on a level, you often have the choice to try a parallel route and come back to your problem area later. Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection is a fitting tribute to its source material. It's a great looking game with some fun bosses and addictive platforming that you'll want to beat. But even while playing on the supposedly easiest setting, many people will never see the end credits. Will you? Now, Super Star Wars is actually the one and only game on this list that I've completed on a default normal setting, but it certainly wasn't without its trauma. I refer specifically to the occasion one night in 1993 when I had finally completed 99% of the game and held it on pause as I was called away for dinner. What followed is almost too horrible to recount, but I returned to the living room to find that my mum had somehow switched off the Super Nintendo and all my progress was lost. How did she even find the power button? We're talking about a woman so technologically inept I could have drawn numbers on a banana and told her it was a mobile phone, watching as she held it up to try and get signal. Hours of careful, methodical progress lost. It would be weeks before I had the time and space to mount a successful challenge again. This was serious, on a par with the time my sister had taped over my Blackadder Goes Forth series with Care Bears the bloody movie. But, my mental scarring aside, Super Star Wars is good fun, if slightly janky in places. There's a huge amount of liberty taken with the license based on A New Hope, but for 1992 the graphics, those film-accurate blaster sounds and that iconic music were more than enough to get you through some imprecise platforming, attritional bosses and regular ambush deaths. The 16-bit sequel, Super Empire Strikes Back, is a much harder game still, with some horrible platforming and evil enemy attack patterns. I certainly never completed that. The developers scaled things back for Super Return of the Jedi, which became my pick of the three, but if you're interested to check these sequels out, the last non-PC digital versions disappeared with the Wii store as far as I'm aware. You'll likely need a Super Nintendo and copies of the original cartridges to play the games now, and those are increasingly rare and expensive. Even today I find myself wanting to complete a run of Super Star Wars every now and again, zooming through the Death Star trench in my Mode 7 X-Wing before listening to that sweet medal ceremony music. And for those of you with cruel mothers like mine, with a potassium-based ear infection, there are of course save states available for the modern digital version. Even so, this is tough. Who amongst us can say they've completed the game on the Jedi difficulty? If that's you, tell us which droids we're actually looking for in the comments section below. When it was first released in 2018, the established gaming media let out a collective cheer, proclaiming Celeste to be one of the best games ever made. Whether you agree with that strength of feeling or not, there's no doubt that Celeste is a great game, and crucially for this list, it's harder than a granite statue of Ray Winston looking hard. Like a brutal 8-bit NES game, Celeste will offer you no shortcuts to success. Difficulty settings won't help you here, as the game is all about your platforming skill, trial and error, and dying over and over and over and over. It's handy then that respawns are instantaneous, and it's hugely gratifying to nail a section you've been working on for several minutes. Celeste's excellent level design language means you often know what to do, it's just how to do it, and the precise controls mean failure is only ever your own fault. Unusually for this type of game, Celeste has a surprisingly well written and affecting story, told with short passages of text in cutscenes between each level. Player character Madeline is suffering with her mental health, and at regular intervals she's literally pursued by her own demons incarnate. The developers have done a great job in weaving a sensitive subject into the game, making for clever boss style encounters and adding context to everything you do. If you're really stuck, there are assist or cheat options that enable certain bonuses like invincibility if you want to continue the story but find the platforming too difficult. And it does get difficult. The final few areas in particular are sure to test the very best players. If you're a speedrunner, this is the perfect game to show off your skills. There's even a speedrunner clock option built into the game. For the rest of us, Celeste is well worth a look as an addictive, charming platformer packed full of secrets. But can you make it to the end without using the cheats? Have you collected all the B-side tapes and completed the even harder levels? My lasting admiration goes out to anyone who has. Before anyone says anything, yes, I do know that New Zealand is 2 words, but Japanese developer Taito clearly didn't, so here we are. No platform game fan's education is complete without a trip to New Zealand. I don't care how old you are, if you haven't shot snails with a bow and arrow and collected fruit as a small fluffy kiwi bird, your platforming journey is incomplete. The Newzealand Story was released around the beginning of what many people consider to be the golden age for arcades. In a year that also saw the arrival of Altered Beast, Splatterhouse, and one of my personal favourites, the Robocop side-scrolling shooter. But unlike those more advanced games, which all suffered in their various conversions to the then limited home PCs and consoles, the Newzealand Story is an example of pure gameplay that even the humble Sega Master System could handle, and there have been plenty of arcade-accurate conversions ever since. The version you're looking at here is a perfect buttery smooth emulation I'm playing on the PS5 via the brilliant Arcade Archives collection, which just keeps growing on the PS Store and elsewhere every week. It all looks so cute and simple, doesn't it? The story is that old chestnut, playing as little Tiki the Kiwi. You must rescue your girlfriend, Pee-Pee, who has been kidnapped by a big bad leopard seal. In short, bounce your way from point A to point B, picking up captured mates until you eventually find the cage with the missus in it. What starts as simple enough to ease you in soon becomes one of the best tests of platforming and shooting skills ever to come out of the arcade. The gameplay just feels right, with bite-sized stages you know you can beat with the right amount of practice and dexterity. The boss encounters at the end of each of the 5 main worlds are also quite varied and put up enough of a fight to make you sweat on your final life. If you've got kids or younger relatives that fancy themselves as gamers, show them this and see how they do. Although just a warning that you will have to listen to them humming the theme tune for the rest of the year. Cuphead will kick you so hard between the legs, you won't see your nuts again until you clean your teeth. The notoriously brutal run-and-gun platformer is every bit as deserving of its reputation, and it's a game that only the most determined will ever beat. It's hard. Damn hard. Harder than a solid diamond copy of Professor Stephen Hawking's book, Hard Stuff I Don't Understand. Like many, I was charmed by the fantastic late 20s, early 30s art style, and I saw this as the type of game I'd probably bounce through in a few hours, then go through again to hoover up any final trophies. Nearly 5 years on from when I first started playing, I'm still a way off completion, despite repeated returns to the game, mixing up my choice of weapons, characters, and attempting the more sadistic boss battles with a friend in 2-player. Nothing has got me through to the end, and I don't expect that anything will, and yet I'll probably keep trying. In truth, I think Studio MDHR have overdone it a bit, and have sometimes used the difficulty to mask short, uninspired level design. You'll want to appreciate the amazing work that's gone into the graphics, animation and sound, but you simply don't have the time as you're attacked on all sides by enemies, projectiles and traps. You have no choice but to concentrate fully on your on-screen position, landing the perfect jumps and parrying anything pink with perfect accuracy. It's relentless. The 2 original player characters play identically to one another, but in addition to a brand new island full of levels, the delicious Last Course DLC introduced Miss Chalice, who can double jump instead of parry and roll dodge attacks. But there's no cheesing going on here. It's just a slightly different way to play the game that might work for 1 or 2 run and gun levels or a couple of the bosses. There is an easy mode available that shortens the boss encounters, but you can't complete the game this way. Ultimately, you have to beat everyone and everything on regular difficulty to see the final stage. Some hardcore gamers might disagree, but I hope that Studio MDHR's next game is something a bit calmer, or at least has an option to tone things down a bit so we can enjoy more of their fantastic art that must have been painstaking to design and implement. In the meantime, if you've beaten this game and the DLC by whatever means, colour me seriously impressed. So, go on then. Who's going to tell me that they laugh in the face of these challenges? Who completed these games with one hand blindfolded while balancing on a seal's nose? What games do you think are even harder? I'd love to hear your stories of pain and triumph in the comments below. Check out my video for 5 excellent run and gun side-scrolling shooters if you want to unload some lead after all this difficulty, and I'll be back very soon with more features and reviews, including some great action platformers and side-scrolling beat-em-ups that you probably haven't heard of. Cheers for now!